Hey guys, welcome to your first math lesson. Woohoo! So we're on lesson 81, U.S. Customary System, on page 504. So if you would like, or you should, pause this video and take a moment to look at the charts on page 504 and 505. So if we look at the chart on page 504, we have the units of weight. So we have 16 ounces equals 1 pound, and 2,000 pounds equals 1 ton. On page 505, we have a chart for units of length and a chart for units of liquid measure. Now, if you see on my screen, I have added this lovely chart that you also find in your book. This chart will actually be really useful, this visual, because these are things that we see in our everyday life. In the kitchen, I have a gallon of milk, I have a half gallon, I have measuring cups, I have about a pint of flour. So this is really good if you're a visual learner, just to kind of see things that we can relate to. So if you turn the page, actually a couple pages, and you look at page 508, we're going to start by looking at some lesson practice problems. Give me a second to change my pen. Okay, so let's take a look at lesson practice A. So it says a typical door may be about how many feet tall? Well, if we look at a typical door, Mr. Poole, technically, he really does have to bend down or duck down to get through the door. So if he has to duck down, Mr. Poole is about 6'7". And so if he has to duck down, we can say that the door is about 7 feet tall. Okay, continuing to practice, let's do letter H. That looks fun. So if we look at H, we have 2 times, and in parentheses, 3 feet plus 4 feet. Now what you know, or what we've talked about with order of operations, we know from PEMDAS that we have to do the parentheses first. So 3 feet plus 4 feet equals, you got it, it's 7 feet. Okay, now the key for this is to not forget about the 2. So that 2 is on the outside, so it's multiplying. So 2 times 7 feet equals 14 feet. Awesome job. Now the last one we're going to look at is in the actual lesson. We're going to look at number 14 on page 509. So if we look at number 14, it says a pint of milk weighs about 1 pound. How many pounds does a gallon of milk weigh? So we're going to go through some questions to kind of get us to the answer. So first, we need to ask ourselves, how many pints are in a quart? So go ahead and pause the video and look at the charts. So how many pints are in a quart? You should have seen from the chart that there are 2 pints in 1 quart. Okay, now the next question we have to ask ourselves is how many quarts are in half a gallon? So there are 2 quarts in half a gallon. Okay, so how many pints are in a half a gallon? Well, if there's 2 pints in 1 quart and there's 2 quarts in a half a gallon, we know that that is 2 times 2, and that'll get us to how many pints are in half gallon. So 2 times 2 is 4. So there are 4 pints in a half gallon. Now we need to look at the question, and the question says, how much does a gallon of milk weigh? Well, if there's 4 pints in half a gallon, then to get to a full gallon, we would do 4, the number in half a gallon, the number of pints, times 2, because there's 2 half gallons in a gallon, and that equals 8. So we know now that there are about 8 pints, or that there are 8 pints in a gallon. Okay, now we know a pint of milk weighs about a pound. So what operation is used to find out how much a gallon of milk weighs? Well, for this, we're going to use multiplication. So how can I write a multiplication problem that shows how much a gallon of milk weighs? Well, if a gallon of milk, or if a pint is about 1 pound and I have 8 pints in the gallon, well, that tells me that I have about 8 pounds in a gallon of milk. And the last step that I'm going to do is before I move on, it's always good to check, not only to check your work, but to check, did we answer the question? So the question was, about how many pounds does a gallon of milk weigh? So did we actually answer that question? And yes, we did. Yay, you did it. Awesome job. So go ahead and keep working through the lesson, and I will see you for the next video. Keep up the great work.